On today's show, it wasn't always pretty, but the Hawks got a big-time road win on the road in Detroit, and it's their 14th win in the last 15 games. We'll get into how they did it, what the issues were in the third quarter, and more, and it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2199 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday live from Detroit in the aftermath of what became a really nice win for the Hawks, 130-129 over the Pistons. And I want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out, subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll dive in now to the 14th win in the last 15 games for the Hawks. And in the process of this victory, they avoid a season series sweep against the Pistons, and they have been 0-3 coming in to this one. And while this is already going to be the case, it's now official. The Hawks have clinched a play-in spot, at least, and they have clinched a 500 record or better with 41 wins already as of late March. So lots of positives. The Hawks had an interesting game along the way here. We'll talk about quite a bit. Jalen Johnson did return after a 2-game absence. That's encouraging. With the shoulder issue, I asked Jalen post-game if there was any health issues at all. He said no. He said he felt good. That's positive. Obviously, Cade Cunningham out for the Pistons, which certainly got a lot of attention, and rightly so. Cade has been a great kind of all-NBA player this year. He didn't play, nor did Isaiah Stewart, but the Hawks were still, according to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, a 2.5-point underdog on the road in Detroit. So I've already seen people downplaying this win because of Cade not playing. I understand, but even without Cade this year, Detroit was 8-2 coming in the night. And this is a road win against a playoff-level team, the number one seed in the entire Eastern Conference right now, and the Hawks are underdogs at tip-off, and they played well enough to get it across the line. So if you didn't watch this one, I will get into a lot more detail later on, but the Hawks are up by 21 points in the first half and up by 18 points at halftime. The third quarter was pretty much a disaster for Atlanta, gave the entire lead back in like 6 minutes, but they managed to stay afloat and win it anyway, which for me is a huge takeaway from this game. I talked to Jock Landale along with Lauren Woods of the AJC post-game. I thought Jock was really interesting post-game, talking about how the Hawks almost needed one of these kind of tough, close-fought victories. A lot can be said on the positive direction about the Hawks beating up on everyone the last month plus. Lots of blowout wins, not a ton of like close-fought, crunch time situations. But Jock pointed back to how they kind of fractured against Houston in their one loss during this run on the road, and there were signs of that maybe happening tonight when they kind of imploded in the third quarter, but they held it together. And that's a sign of a mature team. Like, you're going to have some bad stretches, obviously, but multiple players, multiple coaches, etc. Talked about how this game could be kind of a growth moment for the team. And you love to learn in a win. And I think the Hawks almost blew this game, and that would have been unfortunate. But in the end, it's a quality win over a quality opponent on the road, and they kind of had to have an extra period to do it. It was an overtime game. A lot to get to from this one. But the top line thought for me was that the Hawks found a way to win. And that's not always easy to do. It's not always pretty sometimes, but the Hawks made enough plays defensively at the end of the game, offensively late in regulation, et cetera, to emerge victorious. I would say it was encouraging on both ends of the floor at times, and also maddening on both ends of the floor at times. I'll start with the offense in this game. They had a 118 offensive rating on the road against the Pistons. That's very, very good. Like, Cade being out doesn't kills their offense a little bit. Defensively, they are really good with or without Cade. So the Hawks scoring at that level on the road against Detroit is pretty impressive. And honestly, it was pretty much all positive other than the one glaring aspect of ball security, which almost lost the Hawks this game in some ways. So on the positive side, they shot 6% inside the arc in this game, and attempted 52 three-point attempts. That's a lot of threes, and the Hawks do like that, generally speaking. Most of those were also pretty good looks, I thought, if you watch the film back. A lot of quality shots along the way. There were some forced shots as well. You kind of have to have that many. But I actually asked Quinn pregame about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And the Hawks have some guys on this team, including Nickeil. I think CJ's part of this, even Jalen, where even a contested shot can be a good shot. And the Hawks did take some good ones along the way. They had their typically strong 31 assists in this game, and they had a absolutely great offensive rebounding game. Dyson Daniels was absolutely everywhere. He had a career high with 8 offensive rebounds from a guard. That doesn't happen. That's a crazy number. And the team had 18, which is one less than the Hawks season high on the glass. So they were really flying around, extra chances that kind of led to the Hawks getting the extra kind of win on the margins in this game. They had decent balance as well. 4 guys 16 points or more, three guys 21 points or more, like really good top end stuff on offense. The problem, which was very obvious if you watch this game back, was the ball security. So I asked Quinn about that during post game. He kind of said like sometimes they got overwhelmed. There were some bad ones, but they weren't like unforced. There were some careless moments for sure, but they had 20 turnovers that led directly to 31 points, and that almost bit them in this game. Detroit kind of relies on turnover creation, and that's, part of what this is not a disaster to me is that Detroit literally is number 1 in the league in turnover creation on on defense. So not a huge surprise. The Hawks have some ball security issues in this game. That was a point of friction coming in. I talked about it a lot on the show last night. The Hawks are going to have to take care of the ball. Well, they didn't, and they managed to win. But I will say they did not commit a single turnover in overtime, which was definitely helpful. Just getting shots to the rim can be a big thing. So I would say my overall grade for the offense was a positive one for sure, with the one exception of the turnovers, which were far too many along the way. And basically everyone that's a key figure for the Hawks had some turnovers in this one. 4 for Dyson, 4 for McCollum, 5 for Jalen, 2 for Kuminga, et cetera, et cetera. So it was not just one player. It was not just one unit. They had some issues the entire way, but didn't bite them in the end. On defense, this is the craziest stat of the night for me. So the Hawks had a 118-ish defensive rating in this game. That's not good overall. Against a Cadeless Pistons team, the Hawks should be able to do better than that, and I think they probably know that. In fact, they know they do that after talking to those guys post-game. But they also were good defensively for large stretches of this game. The second quarter, the fourth quarter, overtime. They had good numbers and good process stuff along the way. The crazy thing is the Hawks have this incredibly dominant starting lineup that's been killing everyone for 6 weeks now. And yes, I've raised some concerns that like some of the stuff on the margins is a little bit unsustainable with that group. Like, for example, McCollum's defensive numbers are not necessarily, because he's not a good defender necessarily. Anyway, they've been destroying everyone with the starters for a long time. In this game, the starting 5 was minus 10 in 15 minutes in a game the Hawks won. That's surprising because this entire time they've been really riding that lineup. They had a 166.7 defensive rating with the starters. 166. And the Hawks still won the game. The Hawks could not stop anyone with their starters in this game, and they still won it anyway. That's the craziest stat. So Detroit shot the ball well inside the arc. The Hawks did a good job actually running them off three-point line. They don't really have a lot of shooters. It's Duncan Robinson is kind of the only one. He was 5 of 10, but they did make life difficult on Dennis Jenkins, on Karis LeVert, old friend Kevin Huerter, etc. And that was a good defensive effort, I thought, for the most part for the Hawks. On the glass, they were actually okay. There were some costly ones, I will say, in the fourth quarter and overtime, but they did hold Detroit to basically its season average on the offensive glass, which honestly, given Okongwu's foul trouble, given the size that Detroit has, is a pretty reasonable result. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. And they only allowed 19 free throw attempts in an overtime game. That's very good. They did lose the turnover battle. Usually the Hawks do a lot better, as most teams would, when they win on the turnover battle, but they didn't in this game. And the Pistons had a lot of assists, but I think there's something to be said in a positive direction for the way that the Hawks played defense in the fourth quarter and in overtime, executing. And even like the big shot of the game for Detroit was this jumper by Tobias Harris at the end of regulation. It wasn't like poorly defended. There was a guy there. So, given the issues the Hawks had throughout the game, I don't think it was a positive defensive game on the whole, but there's something to be found there if you want to find it, that the Hawks, did okay on the margins, even if the overall results basically were all because of how bad the first quarter and the third quarter were in this game. And that's a big chunk of the game. I'm not hand waving that, but it wasn't ideal, but they were able to hold up in key moments. And look, zooming out before we move on to the rest of the podcast and some more granular details and analysis, this is the best win of the run for the Hawks. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. It was not the most dominant win. They didn't play the best that they played in this run by any means, but they beat a good team on the road. I think pretty clearly I would rather play Orlando at home without Franz and company, like the way the Hawks did a couple weeks ago, than I would want to play Detroit on the road without Cade. This is the best team the Hawks have seen, especially when you throw in the venue being on the road. So this is their best win of this run, and they played through adversity to do it. Now, they created some adversity themselves. They were really, really, really good in the first half. Gave it all back. But they didn't crack. They held in, And for me, this is like a playoff level atmosphere. It was a big time game, national TV, lively crowd. It was a fun one to be at, fun one to cover. But for me, it's like, hey, the Hawks just found a way to win. That can be overstated. I do like to give everyone the actual context of what happened on the court. I don't like to do the whole narrative thing, and it's kind of narrative-y. I understand that, but the Hawks really did find a way. Like, they almost blew it in the regulation. They had some trouble in overtime, but they got it over the line, and because of that, they have now improved once again to 14 wins in the last 15 games and 41 for the season. Okay, in a second, if you're new to the podcast, we'll dive into the rest of the granular action, my analysis, rotation thoughts, play-by-play at the end of the game, etc. And then also later on in the podcast, a look at the player evaluations and the standings around the Hawks in the Eastern Conference right now. Before we get to all that, a word from our partners on the show. Spring is a natural reset point. And if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it is messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, and no clear thread of who said what and when, etc. That's what today's show is sponsored by the folks at Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, and Quo is trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number, so you actually just never miss a call or a text or an opportunity. And one awesome thing for me is that everything lives in one clean thread, including calls, texts, voicemails, etc. And the whole team can actually see the entire conversation. Nothing will fall through the cracks along the way. And they have AI summaries as well that save serious time on logging calls and highlight the next steps automatically. It just makes your business feel more organized and, importantly, more responsive. Make this the season that no opportunity and no customer slips away from you. And try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO for Quo, QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. If you're going to go ad-free or get some more perks along the way, you can join the Everydayer Club right now. Get the first month for free of the Everyday Club if you use the code MARCH right now. And the place to go to learn more is lockedonhawks.supercast.com. And we'll dive back in now to how this game unfolded. The Hawks had some turnover issues early and often. They got down 7-2 at the beginning of the game as a result of that. And defensively, it was really kind of a mess, I would say, in the first few minutes. They allowed 20 points in the first 5 minutes. Detroit had 9 of 11 from the floor. The Hawks had some pretty uncharacteristic breakdowns against Detroit in pick and roll. There was a trip where they actually left Duncan Robinson just absolutely wide open by himself in the middle of a half-court set, just like a clear breakdown on the perimeter. It was pretty rough. The Hawks, though, did shoot well early on to kind of withstand that. They made their first 5 threes of the game to kind of play even at the outset. Rotationally, no huge surprises, although I have some notes later on in particular, Zachary Richeche. But it was Vincent and Richeche as the first subs, Landale after that, Kuminga after that, and then Kispert to begin second quarter. There was one brief run of Mo Gay in this one, but mostly a 10-man rotation and became 11 briefly in the second half. On a non-player note, by the way, before I forget, Hawks assistant Ronald Norred is going to be actually named, and already was named, the head coach of Butler at the college level today. Norred was a player there under Brad Stevens, and it's a good gig if you can get it. Quinn said a lot of nice things about Ron at pregame today. He's already gone to be with Butler. And Ryan Schmidt was on the bench in Norred's usual seat. So shouts to Ron, a good guy by all accounts. Hawks Summer League head coach a couple years ago, for example, and highly respected in the industry. And that's obviously a promotion to be like to go from like the number 4 or 5 assistant with the Hawks to a head coach at Butler is a big job. And good on him for going ahead and getting that position locked in. So back to the game itself. Defensively, it did stiffen, which I said before, but like they had some bad stretches that were followed by good stretches. They had allowed 9 points in the last 7 minutes of the first quarter and kind of avoided the mistakes much better. A big dunk by Richeche actually late in the first quarter over Dennis Jenkins that was an eye-popping highlight, and the Hawks made 7 threes in the first quarter. They opened the second quarter with the Trinity of Terror. So if you listened to the show yesterday, you will know that John Hollinger coined that nickname for the Kispert, Landale, McCollum trio. That trio was once again -2 in about 3 minutes. Kispert had a very rough individual stint in the first half. He made a 3, but missed a couple free throws, and then defensively was getting picked on pretty mercilessly, I thought, in the first half. The Hawks did about an 11-0 run mid-quarter after the Hawks got down to 6. Atlanta got 5 straight stops, forced turnovers, etc., and they were up by 18 at halftime and as many as 21 late in the first half. Jalen Johnson, I thought, was utterly dominant in the second quarter. After he had some rust in the first quarter coming off of the 2-game hiatus, Jalen had 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists in the second quarter alone in like 8.5 minutes. He was absolutely awesome. I was getting texts, I think because in an ESPN game, from people around the league that I know. They were like, hey, Jalen Johnson is dominant. I'm like, yeah, you think? He's been incredible in this quarter, and he was. Defensively, it was way, way better in my notes and on film and all that stuff. After the first 6 minutes, they turned the water off the rest of the half. Unfortunately, they gave it all back in the third, but still, it was good for a solid quarter plus in the first half. Now, they had a nightmare start in the second half, like truly awful. Detroit had a 16-0 run in the blink of an eye to go from down by 18 to down by 2. The Hawks missed their first 6 shots of the half, turnovers, etc. Defensively, they didn't have to stop for like 4 full minutes. It was just a nightmare, honestly. And normally, I think the criticism of NBA coaches not calling timeouts is like vastly overblown. I get why. It's like just customary, like to stop a run. I understand that. In the NBA, I think it's not necessarily what everyone always does. People were really mad about Quinn not doing it in this game. I get that. I will also say, I say that because I'm about to point out that I think Quinn should have called one before he did. So I think that's a little bit too easy, but it's also kind of true in that spot. Okongwu had foul trouble the entire second half. He had 4 fouls with 8 minutes left in the third, went to the bench early, and then ended up fouling out in regulation. But ended up being a 27-5 overall run by the Pistons to go from the Hawks up by 18 to down by 4. And defensively, it was truly, truly hideous. I gave the number already once, but like a 167 defensive rating with the starting 5, just like crazy bad in that spot. They did play Mo Gay briefly at center against Paul Reed for Detroit, but as soon as Jalen Duren came back in, it was Landale. And they clearly did not trust Mo to kind of have to deal with Duren's physicality, which kind of makes some sense on some level. I thought Gabe Vincent was a sneaky part of this win. He had a couple of huge threes in the third quarter when things were really wobbling on offense. Nikhil had a couple of big shots in that period as well. And the Hawks did get into the fourth quarter up by 3, which could have been much worse given how it started. They allowed 40 points in the third quarter. It was kind of dire defensively in a way that was frustrating. They did not open the fourth quarter with the Eternity of Terror on the floor. There were a couple of bad turnovers. One by Kispert early in the fourth that was pretty rough. One by, I think, Jalen that was pretty rough as well. Dyson had an awesome rebound that actually led to a Jalen 3 to tie the game. Okongwu kept getting called for fouls. Weirdly, in this, I'll stop here. This is a game that I thought was officiated very strangely and kind of poorly. They let a lot go, which guys did acknowledge after the game. You know, Jock said this post-game, like, there's some freedom in that if you're trying to scramble for rebounds, all that stuff. But at the same time, it was just oddly called, and they let a lot of things go, except for Okongwu was the only guy that was like getting called for ticky-tack stuff. Like, for example, nobody else in the game had more than 3 fouls, I think, and for most of the game, other than Okongwu having 6. Kind of strange. Anyway, they rode with Kuminga for a long time in the fourth. I don't think he played well at all in that stretch. It was kind of funny because in my notes, it's right here as well. I thought McCollum was like pretty bad for the lion's share of the game. And then I say that McCollum went crazy at the end of the fourth quarter to kind of bail the Hawks out to some degree. But until then, people were like, why is Kuminga still playing? And I think it was because McCollum hadn't been playing very well. And that was notable at that point in time. I'll fast forward a little bit here because it will get really long if I don't. But I'll reset here. The Stars were on the floor for a little bit, and then Okongwu fouled out right away. So then it was suddenly Jock Landale for a long, long time at the end of regulation into overtime. The Hawks actually get a 3 from McCollum to go up by 1 late in the game. They exchange empty trips from there during a second chance bucket to go put the Hawks down by 1 again. Then McCollum hits this crazy circus shot clock buzzer shot from 3 that was like off 1 foot, and that was a huge shot. He was on fire. He got blocked by Duren after that, and then he had a jump shot after that on the same possession. They got to stop. I thought Lando had a great box out actually on that possession to kind of seal things off. Then Jalen misses a top of the key 3, but Dyson chases down another rebound as he was the entire game. And then McCollum hits another jump shot on the baseline plus the foul to go up by 5 in the final minute. McCollum had 11 points in 3 minutes. I asked Quinn about that. I asked Jalen about that post game. They were like, this is what he does. And that's true. McCollum, if there's one thing that he's always done is like be able to get his own shot. And he did multiple times at the end of the game and was making a bunch of huge ones there. The Hawks did have a couple chances to kind of just end the game in the last minute. If they got one stop, they could have ended the game. They didn't get it despite an offensive rebound for Detroit. And then Nikhil Alexander-Walker, who has been the hottest shooter in the entire league this month, missed a great look at a dagger 3 in the final 20 seconds. If that goes in, the game's over. The Hawks win in regulation. It didn't go in. people were mad about that shot. I don't know why. Like, I know it didn't go in, which might be the only reason, but Nikhil has been incredible. It was an open look. Like, you take that every day, and he just happened to miss it. So the Hawks are up by 2 in the final 20 seconds. I did not love that multiple times down the stretch, the Hawks played McCollum and Landale on a defense-only possession. But that also is not why they scored. So Tobias Harris hits a jump shot over Jalen to tie the game. That wasn't on CJ or Landale, but I think process-wise, I did not love they were not going defense only for, like, put Mogay in, put Ricochet in, put somebody else in on defense. They did have a chance to win it in regulation with a McCollum ISO. I just said McCollum had been red hot, so I understand that he was. But I didn't love, if you watch the playback, they gave themselves like no other options. It was McCollum, ISO, and that was it. There was nothing else going on. And in a tie game, like, you could run an action and have Jalen get downhill. Like, Jalen was really good in this game. It wasn't like Jalen was having a bad game. He's your best player. It's a tie game. If they're down by 3 there, I get it. Getting a McCollum pull-up is great. But I didn't love that. And also, he kind of lost the ball, had to speed up, and then shot like he could have made that shot, but it wasn't a great look, we'll say. To overtime. I mentioned before, I think briefly, but if I didn't, I will say it now. Only second time this year, the Hawks actually played in overtime. And this is game 73, only 2 games in overtime. And the other one was back in November. So it's been a while since the Hawks have actually played an extra period. Each team kind of stumbled out of the gate a little bit. It looked like Lando might have actually hurt his shoulder. Mogay went to the table and then got pulled back. So Lando was able to stay in the game. McCollum scored again to go up by 3. And just like the Hawks did in regulation, they were up 5 with like a minute and a half left again. And then Detroit scores. Jalen misses a jump shot. Detroit scores again, and it's back to 1 under a minute to go. Then with the Hawks up by 1, I really did not like the action on the possession that the Hawks did not score on there between McCollum and Landale. Somehow was the choice. Ended up with another tough shot from McCollum that he missed, basically in the same spot as the other one that he missed in regulation. I just didn't love that action being what they went to in that spot. And then Detroit had the ball down 1 with the shot clock off. And the second straight time that the Hawks again had McCollum and Landale on the game on defense. They had a foul to give, which Dyson gave with like 5 seconds to go. And then Tobias Harris misses a turnaround jump shot. And then the last chance put back by Duran goes begging, and the Hawks manage to escape. So I know that's a lot. My takeaways late were, again, they got over the line. They were up 5 and could have lost it in regulation, could have lost it in overtime. They probably should have won the game in regulation. I should also say. If they get 1 rebound in the last minute, or if Nikhil makes that jump shot, or if they get a better shot at the end, they had 3 or 4 opportunities to kind of just end the game in the regulation, and they probably should have done that. But Quinn said this post-game kind of unprompted. Sometimes when you lose a game like that, maybe not lose a game, but like have it go to overtime when you were in control and should have won it, you might have that kind of linger and have that bite you in overtime. And the Hawks didn't do that. They led the entire way in overtime again. They just were able to get back on top and hold things together. And then even at the end, like just battling for rebounds and able to escape at the end of the game with the victory that they badly needed in a spot. So I will stop there. I can probably go forever on the play-by-play at the end of the game. Execution-wise, it was not always flawless. It was ugly. It was gripping. People around the league were talking about how fun this game was, and they absolutely were right. But the Hawks managed to get out of there with a win, and that is what matters at the end of the game. Okay. In a second, I'll dive into the individual player stuff from this contest and a quick check at the Eastern Conference playoff race and more in just one moment. It is tax time, and for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Starting with an appointment that actually is not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they actually get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to TurboTax in the app on the spot. Just like that, you are done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every single dollar that you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local. That's TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports like you do work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the actions, and when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never have a dynamic way to apply that knowledge, and now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You are no longer just a spectator, Play-by-play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, and a quick look at the standings about the Eastern Conference playoff race, which has been a topic, of course, for a long while here. Not everyone played tonight, but the Hawks getting this win actually really helps them because Philadelphia and Miami both won. Orlando and Charlotte did not play today. And as I record this, Toronto is still playing. They are losing at halftime against the Clippers. If the Raptors lose, and you will know that before I do, listen to this podcast, if the Raptors lose, the Hawks will be the 5 seed when you wake up on Thursday morning. If the Raptors win, they will hold the 5 seed, at least until tomorrow. But there's a chance, and I would say, given that they're down 14 points at halftime, a pretty good chance the Raptors will have lost and the Hawks will be 5th. We'll see. But no matter what, the Hawks keep winning, and that definitely helps. And as of right now, they're at 2.5 games up on Charlotte and Orlando, and they're 2 up on Miami to at least be in the top 7. And looking pretty good here as they hunt down a top 6 seed after this victory. Okay. Back to the game itself. Individually, 11 guys played for the Hawks, but only 10 of them played real minutes. Mo Gay played literally 1 minute, was +5, and that was kind of fluky in itself. But I might have tried Mo more, but I understand why they didn't do that. I think defensively, he probably should have played more like spot roles in the fourth quarter, but no huge issue there. I thought Jock Landale was really good, actually. Now, obviously, you're grading on a curve. So if you're new to the podcast, I tend to talk about players in realistic fashion. So Jalen Johnson's quote, pretty good, is a lot better than Jock Landale's pretty good, for example. So it kind of relates to their overall player quality. I thought Jock battled. I thought Jock did a pretty good job. He's actually played 28 minutes against Jalen Duren. It wasn't all against Jalen Duren, but still. 5 points, 10 rebounds for Jock, 2 assists, 1 turnover, was +1 in his minutes. I thought he gave good physicality. And yes, Duren beat him sometimes. It's going to happen. Jalen Duren is an all-star big man. That makes sense. But I thought Jock gave them good minutes, especially because he had to play a lot and was physical. And I think the way the game was officiated actually helped Jock in a way that probably didn't help the Hawks overall. And I thought he was relatively solid at backup center. The big story off the bench, and I think a smaller one because they won, but still a real story that I want to acknowledge, is that Zachary Richichet set a career low in minutes in this game. He played 9 minutes. 9. And it wasn't because he wasn't playing decently well. So in his 9 minutes, the Hawks actually they were +9. That's pretty good. 2 points on a huge dunk, 3 rebounds, no turnovers, did have 2 fouls. I wondered if he came out because of foul trouble, but I can't imagine that would be the case. And I think it was pretty obvious when the Hawks got 100% healthy, as they are right now, which is crazy in itself in late March, and with Kuminga on board, it was likely that he would play less. Richichet would play less. That makes total sense to me. The problem is, Richichet playing 9 minutes in a game where Corey Kispert played 12 minutes and played very poorly doesn't make any sense. That's just flat out. I don't like to go that far, but it was illogical to me. He came out earlier than I expected. I didn't really understand why. Maybe it's because the Hawks were, my theory is that the Hawks were flailing in the third quarter. That wasn't the fault of Zach, but Quinn tends to kind of lean towards veterans, and Zach's not a veteran. That's kind of what it comes down to. But overall, it's a one-off. I'm not saying you have a meltdown about it, but I've been saying for a few weeks now, I don't understand the world where even Kispert and Richichet play couple minutes, much less Kispert playing more than Zach. I don't get that at all, and I stand by that today. And bizarre, I don't think he played great by any means, but he's been playing well recently, flat out, clearly well. So it wasn't like he's in a huge slump and is losing minutes. He's been playing well. So that was a baffling one to me. Elsewhere, Gabe Vincent, I gave some credit to earlier, but he had 8 points in the third quarter. That was huge. When nothing else was going well, he did play well, was +12. Didn't do much else, but that was all he needed to have. So shouts to Gabe Vincent, a small hat tip in his direction. Corey Kispert, the aforementioned, 5 points on 5 shots for Corey, hit 1 3, missed 2 free throws, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. I thought he was very bad, honestly, most of the game. Defensively, he's getting picked on. Offensively, didn't have the shooting impact that you would need to kind of offset that defensive impact. So a rough one for Corey in 12 minutes. I thought Kuminga struggled in this game. There were some nice moments along the way. Rebounding wise, had 5 rebounds, did have 8 points, turned it over twice, took a couple bad shots. Was 2 of 5 from 2, 1 of 4 from 3. 1 at the line as well. Just kind of a not terrible, but like certainly a below average Kuminga game. He's just kind of a clunky fit. I don't know if he's still favoring the knee a little bit at all, but just didn't have a ton of explosiveness I didn't see, and wasn't beating us off the dribble. And the passing was going in the wrong direction after some encouraging moments earlier in his tenure with the Hawks. To the starters in this one, the one guy who played the least was Okongwu, who fouled out in 24 minutes. 11 points for Onyeka, did have 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 rebound. Now, that's not fair to him. The Hawks actually were okay on the last 10 minutes, which for me is more important. They had a 70% defensive rebound rate with Okongwu on the floor in the game, which isn't great, but it's certainly like what they did for the whole game. It was fine. So he gets a little bit of a pass on that for me. I will also say Duren is like a nightmare matchup for Okongwu. Like part of the, I think it's, I've said this many times, I think it's vastly overblown about Okongwu's size and all that stuff. And I will not do that whole thing tonight. But there is a reason why I often say the Hawks do need another center, not in place of Okongwu, but alongside of him to take matchups like this, for example. Doesn't mean you don't play Okongwu at all, but having a bigger center as your number 2 guy, a la Porzingis was supposed to be that in a different way, but would have been helpful here. Lando ended up playing a lot. I don't think Okongwu played well. I don't think he played terrible either. I think he gave them some decent stuff along the way. But also Jalen Duren certainly won that matchup soundly. That's not a huge surprise. Jalen Duren's really good, but Okongwu wasn't as bad as I was seeing people talk about him, basically, online. Dyson Daniels, 16 points, 13 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block, 4 assists. Dyson had an interesting game. They had a couple of really bad passes. I got to say, I always praise Dyson because he's been playing great. A couple of bad moments turnover-wise in this game, but other than that, was really, really good. A career high in rebounds with 13, a career high in offensive rebounds with 8. He was flying around, making winning plays as he always does defensively with 3 stocks, like it's every single day. Got into the paint, and was 8 of 13 on 2s, just a typically solid, really, really impactful Dyson game. Even with a couple of bad turnovers, like rebounding was just crazy good the entire way, and that was a positive sign. McCollum, 27 points on 21 shots in 35 minutes. Took 20, was definitely not shy. Turned it over 4 times, 5 assists, 1 rebound. I thought McCollum, like I said before, wasn't very good for 3.5 quarters, but then a ton of big shots late. So that's part of the situation with McCollum, is like he does bring that. Quinn talked about him being kind of a stabilizing force when I asked about CJ having that huge stretch in the fourth quarter. It's true. Like you don't always want to do this, but you can throw the ball to him and he will get up a good shot, or at least a decent shot. And there is some value in that for sure. So I thought he was a huge factor late. Even if before that he was kind of below average, I thought, until then. Nikhil finally missed some shots in this game, but still was good on the whole. 21 points on 6 of 8 on 2s, 3 of 10 from 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover, good defense. Like it wasn't an A+ Nikhil game, but it was a solid Nikhil game, I think. And then Jalen Johnson, 27 points, 12 assists, 8 rebounds. I thought actually his first stint in the game, post missing 2 games, was actually pretty bad. Like some bad defensive moments for sure for Jalen in the first quarter. When he came back in, he was awesome. Pretty much the rest of the game. Defensively, a little bit hit and miss, but offensively, like just a lot of juice, winning plays. The 12 assists speak for themselves. 7 of 12 on 2s, 2 of 6 from 3. At the line 8 times. Like it was a star game for Jalen, as it sometimes is, and it was good to see him playing without any, at least visible, issues with the injury. And again, he told me post game that he seems to feel fine. So if you were worried, I probably wouldn't be anymore about that. And once it became clear he was going to go tonight, it's like that's pretty encouraging. And I thought he played really well along the way. Okay, that's all I have from a very, very busy game on a Wednesday. I probably could have gone an hour on this game. There's a lot to talk about, and I won't on this night because I am trying to keep things on the rails for Locked On Network purposes. But here we are. Please lock in. And from here, the Hawks will be going to Boston to take on the Celtics on Friday. Another super interesting road test. And the Celtics, I would say, especially factoring in that they don't have Cade, Boston beat OKC tonight. Unless there's the injury stuff that I don't foresee right now, Boston game on Friday will replace this Detroit game as the toughest game the Hawks have had in a long time. So if they can win that one, then even more impressive. But a big-time test. And by the way, Boston then comes to town in Atlanta only a few days later. So they played Boston twice in 4 days, and Boston is very good. So that'll be a real challenge and a nice measuring stick game on Friday in Boston. But in the meantime, the Hawks now have a day to take this one in, reset, maybe get a practice in Boston. We'll see. But a very, very good night for the Hawks. It wasn't always pretty. Again, they almost gave this game away and would have been frustrating if they did up 18 at halftime. That would have been a bad loss. But they were able to hold on, play well enough to win in a tough environment. And for me, a positive night at the office for the Hawks with some interesting takeaways and analysis along the way. All right, everybody, please subscribe to Locked On Hawks anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. And also follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks, which can be found at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, thanks for listening as always, and we'll see you all next time.